In order to break cycles, intentional actions must be taken to stop patterns, behaviors, and thoughts that are harmful to oneself, their families, and the community. Welcome to Carry to Full Terms Breaking Cycles podcast. Welcome to Carry to Full Terms Breaking Cycles podcast. In studio, we have our fifth guest, Pastor Mandy North. And I say pastor because she's the pastor of the Church of the Brethren in Manassas. She's also a board member on Carry to Full Terms board. And she's very active and vocal in the affordable housing space and as a community leader as a community leader in her church and with her children and in the work that we do here at Carry to Full Term. Welcome, Pastor Mandy. We are excited to have you in studio with us on the Carry to Full Terms Breaking Cycles podcast.
Great. It's great to be here today. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you are so welcome. And as usual, we'll just move through with casually having conversations about the things that matter and the work that we do here. But before we get started, I just want to say really briefly, if you haven't listened to any of the previous 4 episodes, please do so. Bless yourself with rich information and just to learn more about the work that we do here at Carry to Full Term, and also to learn critical information about the population that we serve. They're called the hidden homeless population, but in other areas they fall into categories as the missing middle and other titles and topics like that when you're talking about the affordable housing space. So learn about us at carrytofullterm.org and take a listen to the previous 4 episodes. You will not be disappointed. Welcome, Pastor Mandy.
Good. It's good to be here. And I have a question for you.
Yes.
As I confessed earlier, I have not yet listened to one of the podcast episodes.
We will cut this part out.
No, you don't need to cut this part out because I want to know where to find it. And I bet our listeners would love to hear that too. So I always listen to my podcast on Spotify. Can I get it on Spotify?
Well, Emily, our marketing coordinator and engineer of this podcast, she's done an incredible job. Not only can you find every episode on our website, but yes, you could click the link and it will take you to Spotify or any platforms where you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll be able to find us there.
Awesome. Then I'll go look for it. That'd be great.
And the best place to start, as always, is at carriedtofullterm.org. Or you could do Breaking Cycles podcast directly into Spotify's search engine, and we will be able to come up. We'll come up, and you'll be able to listen to us here.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
So thank you, Pastor Mandy. Why don't you go ahead, and I've done a miserable job in introducing you. So go ahead and share a little bit about yourself so that our guests and our audience, we learned today that unexpectedly our podcast is being listened to throughout the community by different community members. So I do not want to rob them of learning about you. So I will allow you to go ahead and introduce yourself, your fullness of yourself and all your roles. And then we'll get into like the nitty gritty about your role on the Carry to Full Terms Board of Director.
Yeah, well, that's great. So I serve as the pastor at the Manassas Church of the Brethren. I've been on the pastoral staff there since 2015. So I've been serving there for the last 8 years. And I am a mom of twins. My twins are 13. And so I've been a member of the Prince William Mothers of Multiples Club. Yes, that's a thing. If you are a mom of twins or triplets or higher order multiples, you're welcome to join us. I serve on the board for Carry to Full Term, and I've been doing that for about 1.5 years now. And I also serve on the strategy team for an organization called Voice, Virginians Organized for Interfaith Community Engagement, where we've been doing a lot of work around affordable housing, mental health care, and criminal justice reform. And so, it's just really great to be here in this space and to support the work of Carry to Full Term.
I so appreciate that. We had Pastor Savage, Dr. Savage, as a guest on, and he shared quite a bit with us about voice. And as you said it again, Pastor Mandy, it just reminded me of the areas that you that are the priority areas for voice. Really are areas that our residents here at Carry to Full Term often require support in and from, and we, unbeknownst to us, the overlap is so it's so almost identical. I was gonna say similar, but it's closer to like the missional anyways. Very, very identical. And when Dr. Savage was here, he gave us quite a bit of information, but I wanted you to tell us, as a member on the strategy team, what does that look like, and how involved is Voice in this area?
Yes.
In Prince William County, I should say.
Yeah, so Voice has been active since 2008, and we really came together. It's an interfaith group, so it's several congregations, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, coming together and saying we want to build power in our community to make real change. Oftentimes, people who are experiencing crises, whether it's homelessness or mental health concerns or criminal justice issues. I mean, you name it. Oftentimes the people experiencing it have no voice, and especially in our political system.
Yeah.
And so Voice wants to be the voice for those folks. And we spend time in listening sessions to hear about the needs. And then we analyze the power around who are the people who can really make change.
Yeah.
And then we hold our elected officials accountable to make that change so we can really see progress for all of our community members and residents who live here.
I'm just sitting here thinking, a significant number of the residents that come to Carry to Full Term, and as I've been doing the research on how trauma and homelessness are interconnected, usually there are a variety of areas that individuals experience traumatic experiences throughout their lives, and everything that you've said about Voice. And how you're now advocating for populations through the interfaith, connectivity, or the connections of different faith groups coming together. Our residents have experienced trauma, and so Voice provides the mental health piece. Homelessness, as a result of maybe something traumatic happened at home or in the community, or another element that causes homelessness is a resident or individuals may have been through the justice system, and that produces another layer of trauma. And then you have the homeless piece, and we provide housing. And so those are some of the layers that I was referring to, how similar we are. But as you explained that, I could see where the differences occur in terms of creating the change to provide the support to those individuals that need it. And I like how you shared that you go to holding your elected officials accountable. And how is that done? What are some recent events that you've had?
Yes. So recently, I believe in July, we held a big action where Governor Youngkin himself came to a church here in Prince William County and met with Voice leaders. And we were really pushing. We are super excited to get a crisis receiving center opened here in Prince William County. So a person experiencing a mental health crisis can get mental health care services right away. Unfortunately, maybe you've even heard this from residents here at the Carry to Full Term House, but in the past, someone experiencing a mental health crisis, there were really two options. You go to the hospital, and the emergency department there that is set up for physical emergencies, physical health emergencies, and you wait until a bed becomes available in a mental health unit. Or police are involved, and police are called, and people are arrested and then sent to jail, and then they're caught up in our criminal justice system. I think one statistic we had heard was about 40% of people imprisoned in our local community are experiencing a mental health crisis and would be better served getting mental health care. And so our hope and our prayer is that this crisis receiving center will be that place for people, a safe place. So we have partnered with the Virginia Hospital Association and the Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police to make this happen, because they are in complete support of this.
Yes.
And we are about $2 million short of getting funding for the youth wing to open, so that there's a place for adults and children to go to get that care. And so that's so one thing that we did was this big action with Governor Youngkin, where we filled a room with about 800 people and said, "Look, Governor Youngkin, we need this, and we need it funded, and it needs to happen now, and we need you to say yes, you're in support of this." And we've done some similar things with our own Board of County Supervisors. We go to Board of County Supervisor meetings, and when they were just approving their comp plan, we made sure that the comprehensive plan, I think it was the Pathway to 2040, included a housing chapter around affordable housing, and that there were specific targets and goals to be met, because when the plan was initially released, it had some really great frou-frou language about affordable housing. It had all these right terms, but like no strategy on how to get there. And so we said, no, we need numbers, and what can we actually do? And so I think those are some of the places where we've been able to make a difference here in the county.
Yeah, I think that's just incredible. We have had an experience here. I carried a full term. The initial mission, that we had was to provide long-term housing to women who are pregnant and homeless. And on the books and our plan to provide that kind of service was great. It's very idealistic. And then once we opened our doors and started providing the services, we encountered unexpected challenges with the population that we serve. And one of those challenges happened about 2.5 years ago, where we had a mom that needed additional services. And usually when we have unexpected, we have to reach out to a lot of professionals, legal professionals to help, medical professionals to help us include amendments to our programs. And we had a mom that needed a lot of mental health services. And in our residence, we provide support and 24-hour care and support, but we weren't equipped to provide mental health emergency services. And when we started looking into getting support, the information that we received back was to call the police department. And I was really stunned, because here you have a mom who just gave birth. Even before she gave birth, she was showing signs of mental health urgency. She needed support. And after she gave birth, it increased. And we were asked to call the police, and it didn't work well for my system. It didn't register that this is the best route. And at the time, I was learning so much more about how to appropriately respond to people who are in mental health crisis. And so I took her to the emergency room, and I stayed there, and I stayed, I think, all night. And then it was exhausting. And at the time, thankfully, we had a crisis response team, but it was usually around when a mom was getting ready to go into labor, or if there were some urgent matters that she needed during the labor and delivery process. So that team got activated, and they took shifts. So we were always with that resident.
Right.
It was very challenging. And so now having a response center created for families, and as you said, $2 million, or you are in need of $2 million for the children's wing. We actually had our first guest, and she was telling us the need for mental health services in teens and young people jumped. Yes. I think it's in the 80th percentile, if I'm incorrectly stating. But if you want to get the accurate information, you can watch the very first episode of the podcast, where we sat down with Elizabeth Stafford, a licensed social worker, and her specialty is to provide mental health support to young people, young adults, and adolescents. So just the fact that wing is being prioritized just tells me that so much thought has gone into creating this center, the response center, to include children, adults, women, and I don't know what it is for people with special needs, but it wouldn't surprise me if that population is also included as well.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the rest of the funding has been secured. We have the funding we need to open up the adult portion.
Yeah.
And we have I think at least half of what we need for the youth portion. We're just missing that last
Wow.
$2 million. For those of us, who don't think $2 million sounds like a lot, but when you talk about a budget of this magnitude, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And we're very close, and it would be great to secure that. The way that this crisis receiving center will work is that there will be what's called 23-hour recliners. So someone experiencing a mental health emergency can go and be in a recliner for 23 hours until they feel stabilized, until they get the medication they need, and may be released right away. And then they get connected to wraparound community services. It's really exciting. The county has that crisis receiving center in the same building as the community service board, and so the other services are right in the same building.
Yes.
And then there are also beds, and so if somebody needs care beyond the 23 hours and is then admitted, there is a safe place for them to stay as they receive mental health care services.
I mean, as you said, it's really exciting. When we are working on applicant and the application process for admitting residents to carry to full term, we do have exclusionary criteria because there are some services and support that we are not able to provide. Right. We don't have 24-hour professional staff to assist if an individual will or may have a mental health emergency. We would have to outsource that or find some referring body to send that individual to. So just having, and like I said, the first episode, we have been getting increase in those types of calls, and it's heartbreaking to not have a place that we can refer those individuals to where wraparound services are available for them. And it's one of the things that we do here at Carry to Full Term. Initially, that's not the popular term. So the term that we use at the time when Carry to Full Term initially opened, we took care of the whole person. Mm-hmm. And so from a perspective for our mission, we are taking care of the whole individual. And we're not just providing support and services to the mom just for her baby. As a matter of fact, we don't even get involved in the conversation about whether she's choosing to carry or not. We're housing, and I do want to underscore that our mission is housing. So even if, someone is having a mental health crisis and they go to the resource center or the call center and they're pregnant and need housing services, we could be a resource to the center, because we will be able to provide the wraparound care for the homelessness piece. And it's I try to provide little nuggets that trauma and homelessness are hand in hand. They overlap, they interconnect. And so we do provide whole person care, and we try to provide all those services here on site to eliminate the burden. Yes. So imagine someone coming from the resource center being referred here to us. They don't have a job. They don't have a source of revenue. They don't have transportation. And then we're asking them to go to all these other places to get resources, which is why you also said it's at the CSB, which is perfect.
Right, because it's all together, right?
So that's why we try to do that here with Carry to Full Term and the service that we provide to our residents, which takes me to your role in support of that mission as a board member. So I will ask you to share a little bit about what that experience has been like for you, but then I want to also talk about what misconceptions there, or preconceived notions that you had about serving as a board member, or what lessons that you've learned since then serving as a board member supporting this specific population, and what the needs are from a board member's perspective.
Sure. Yeah. I first learned about Carry to Full Term. I think I was able to attend the gala in 2019, right? Just before COVID. Yeah. And I absolutely fell in love with the mission at that gala. Hearing the work that you really do. I mean, this is your baby, really, in a lot of ways. This is your heart, sweat, and tears.
And grace. And the grace.
But, what a gift to our community to meet women, to meet moms right where they are, to provide a safe place for them with their babies as they bring new life into this world and try to grow this new life in the chaos of all this world is. and to let her know she's not alone. That's just huge. And so when an opportunity came up to serve on the board, I knew I just really wanted to be a part of this work. I I was a good dear friend of both of ours called me and was like, just so you know, I nominated you to serve on the board and you should do it. And if you heard my bio, you know I'm into a lot of things and not sure how to add one more thing. And I was, it's like one meeting a month and Fran does it all, you'll be fine. But, it really does take a partnership,
it
right?
Does.
Nobody
really
can
does.
do anything by themselves. And we really all have to do our part. And so as a board, to think about what we can do as a board to support you so that you can support these moms has just been so critical. Everything we want to do takes money. It's just the reality of our world around us. And I know we've got amazing volunteers who donate time and people who donate supplies, but at the end of the day, you can't do what you do without funding. And so to be able to share the story of Carried to Full Term with others and to do what we can do to get the funding so that you can do what you need to do to support these moms has just been a gift. And I've been learning along the way, right? Like nobody's a fundraising expert.
No, I've learned. I didn't know. Someone told me the other day that I could sell ice to Eskimos, but I never even looked at it that way. So yes, we're all learning together.
We really are.
Yeah.
We really are. And it's just a great group of folks to learn together with, because I think we all really do have a heart for the mission of Carried to Full Term, to be a safe place to provide housing.
Agreed.
For moms.
Yeah. No, I agree. We used to have a board member. She's an organizational manager, strategist or something like that. And in the beginning, we would have like these exchanges and conversations on how to make improvements. And she was, and some things I didn't understand. And she's like, Franny, this is okay. Organizations go through these 7 stages or something like that. And she said it's like forming, norming, storming. And I was just like, so there are words and terminology
That's right.
for what is happening here. And I just had a passion to help provide housing. So it's not I didn't come into this like as this housing expert or this women's expert. I'm coming from Intel, and I say that all the time. I don't have to deal with, but I love people, and I think it's my strength. It's a skill. And so I just wanted to provide an opportunity, and all of a sudden it comes with all these other things: event planning, fundraising, board leadership. And I didn't know any of that. And I was like, when do I get to work with the moms? When do I get to see the babies? And it's kind of like very rarely I get to do any of that. So I'm happy because I'm not able to do the work that I strongly desire to do in terms of being in the house. I'm happy to be able to serve with a board of supportive community members, community leaders, doing different things, bringing a different variety of different skill sets to the board of directors. But I think also one of the things that our current chair and I, we've joined this board group. And it's so funny. It's by Joan Gary, I think Joan Jerry, she runs it. And she asks all these difficult they're not difficult, but they're real questions. Like what are some of the things? And it's always around board leadership and funding. And I think, if I were to say, I had no idea what boards member, I just thought usually if you wanted to build your resume, serve on a board. But this is not just for resume building. There's a lot of work here.
There is work. Yeah, it's work. And it's good work. I mean, it's fulfilling work. It's not, we're making a difference in people's lives. I mean, who doesn't want to be a part of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you really think of it, and it's not very often that I take the time to sit down and say, oh my gosh, we're doing this, we're doing that. I'm usually thinking, oh my gosh, I need to go get some funds. I need to bring money in. I need, oh my gosh, we have another mom coming in, and she's coming with 2 children and she's pregnant. And I'm really, I want to be a good steward of the responsibilities that we've been tasked with. So those are the thoughts I have almost all the time. I'm thinking, how can the resources be readily available to support and serve the residents. And that's also the responsibility of our board. And I agree with you. We do have a great team of individuals shouldering that. And we currently have 2 vacancies on our board. So if you're out there listening and you've listened to what Pastor Mandy has said in terms of wanting to be a part of, changing people's lives, you could visit us at carrythefullterm.org, and there's a link there that you could fill out an application to become a board or send us an email. That's the easiest route. But I wanted to talk a little bit more, Pastor Mandy, about some of the other things that you're involved in. I know you touched on it briefly. You're a mom of multiple. So tell us and walk us through a little bit of what that part of your life is like.
Yeah. So I do. I have a set of twins. They're 13, a boy and a girl. And I just remember, being pregnant with them and thinking about bringing not just one little life into the world, which is never just a just, right? That's a big deal in and of itself. But knowing I was bringing in 2 lives, and I was just really grateful to have the organization of Prince William Mothers and Multiples Club to answer all my questions, feeding and sleeping and how do you, how do you even just like change diapers when one is crawling away?
2 at a time.
And just knowing you're not alone as a mom, and that there are other moms who have been there and done that and can offer their wisdom. It's just a really great supportive group, and to be on. Of course, a mom's job is never done. And even as my kids are 13, it's like a new parenting level is unlocked. And so it's just a great place to be. They're great. They're just great kids, and just balancing, being a support for the community in all the ways that I serve as pastor and in these board positions, but also being intentional about spending time with my kids is important too, right? Because these times don't last forever.
It goes by really fast. Our youngest is 18, and he graduated from high school this year. And I just remember thinking like high school graduation was so far away. And now he's in his first semester at community college, and it's like stunning. And you just said it unlocks like a new level or new layer of parenting.
Level, right?
Yeah. And someone asked me the other day, so now I have, 3 young adults. The 21-year-old is not as old. We have a 25, 26, and a 21 and 18-year-old. And so someone asked me the other day, does it get any easier? I'm like, the easy years are over. It gets harder. It's so much harder, but it's different.
It's a different kind of hard.
It's a different kind of hard. So you have to let go and release the older ones, and it's kind of like, oh my gosh, I did all that hard work just to let them go. And then you have the younger 2 that are kind of like feeling it out and want to, pursue their own things and having the support system of their older siblings. But I often like contrast that to the residents here. I always say, there was one mom here, and she was just incredible. She graduated the program. And I always say, I wish when I had my babies and they were younger, she was in my life. This lady has just been everything about Carry the Full Term. She just absorbed it. The people that came in to volunteer their time, she absorbed everything that was taught. We spoke to her just the other day. They actually came to visit just the other day, and cool. 2 of our first babies came to visit. They're in the first grade in schools in the area, and so when you see them come back to their house, which is what they call it, they come back to their house, and that mom was just incredible. So as you were saying, you're being a mom for the first time. So often we get residents here who are moms for the first time, and they come here, and I just again want to underscore, we don't get involved in any of that decisions of whether to carry or not to carry, because people ask us that all the time. By the time a resident gets here, they've already made the decision to carry their children. They're usually in like, often we'll get like a resident in their first trimester, but it's usually in their second or third trimester. So they come, and the first expression that we get is disbelief. I can't believe this is real. Like, this is an actual house. And if you have to process that, and you have to hear where they're coming from, knowing that they were a day ago, a couple hours ago, were sleeping in their cars, or sleeping in the park, couch surfing, and recognizing that, wow, I locked out. There's actually a support system where people actually want to help me. Yes. And that's who we are. That's where we are at Carry the Full Term. Having board members like yourself, being able to be a resource, a support system to say, you know what, you're not alone.
Right.
We are helping. We may not necessarily be physically in the house all the time, but we are supporting you.
Yeah.
We are here.
Yeah. I mean, just as a new mom myself, I'm blessed. We have a stable home. I'm married, and there's a lot of stability in my life. And the idea of being a mom for the first time brings its own restlessness and nervousness, and there's so much to think about and process, and to know that you don't have to walk that road alone is so important to be surrounded by a support system. And even just not just the staff and volunteers that Carry to Full Term, but this is a house with other moms, right? And so, moms are supporting moms, and building friendships and learning together as they figure out what this whole parenting thing is all about.
I hear you. We see it all the time. I often say, the work that we do in Carry the Full Term, like, we're in the trenches of people's lives. It's not all really clean cut and black and white. There are layers, and like I said, we added the piece for when a mom is having a mental health crisis, but originally we didn't have trauma care included, and we saw that there was a need for that, especially when we're asking these residents who are here just to carry their babies to take care of themselves and prepare for their children. Right. So we added trauma care because we would get stuck sometimes with them. They're like, how do you want me to do this? We became the disruptors in their life because we're asking them to incrementally make these changes. But the trauma that they've experienced just didn't allow them to see how that would be beneficial. Right. And so we added that to provide, again, part of the wraparound care, just whole person service and support. Right. And so, that's the work we do here at Carry the Full Term. And I'm so happy to have you in studio with us. But Pastor Mandy, before we go, tell us a little bit more about your role as a pastor, because it's... Okay, let me just be transparent and honest before we get into this part of the conversation, Pastor Mandy. I grew up being taught, I don't think that anymore, but for the longest time I was taught, I was born in church, so I was indoctrinated and grew to learn and understand, biblical teachings that in my home and within the church, that women had no place in the pulpit, at the pulpit, around the pulpit. And here now I'm sitting next to a female pastor, but I've gotten past that because I did wrestle with it for a long, long time. And my mom used to always affirm it, and my stepdad used to say, women have no place at the pulpit and they have to get permission from their husbands. And I was just like, what? So I would go back and I would read it, and that's like we were talking earlier. But when I read the whole thing and not just a verse, it didn't minister to me in the way that I had been taught it. Yes. So now that I'm sitting next to a female pastor of a whole church, tell us, Pastor Mandy, enlighten us.
No, I'm same. I grew up in a church where women weren't pastors. Yeah. I've said my dad is Roman Catholic, my mom was Southern Baptist, and I was raised in the Catholic Church. And so all of my examples for church leadership was always men. I started attending a Presbyterian youth group, and it was a Presbyterian Church of America, PCA, and they also don't affirm women leadership. So men were not pastors, they weren't elders, they weren't deacons, and they do not teach Sunday school classes if there are men in the class. So women could teach a women's Bible study, and women could teach children. But once you had adult classes, if there were men in the class, women would not teach. So that was my example, and that was just how I understood ministry to be ministry leadership. And but I love church. I loved my faith was so important to me growing up, and I felt like I had some leadership skills within me, and I had a call in my heart to get into ministry, and so I always thought I would be the youth pastor's wife, that I would marry a youth pastor.
Oh my goodness.
And get to be the youth pastor's wife was always my goal. And I went into education, and when I went to college, I'm a graduate of Bridgewater College, and got a degree in education, and actually taught middle school math for a period of years because women can be teachers. And so I was a teacher. And I married my husband, and he is amazing, and I love him, and he's committed to the church. He serves as a deacon in our congregation, but he doesn't have a call to be a pastor. He's a software engineer, which is great. Software developer.
There goes the job to be a pastor's wife.
But I can't be the youth pastor's wife if I'm not married to the youth pastor. So I wrestled with that. Wow. And so when we got to the Manassas Church of the Brethren, I was a young adult. We were newly married. I was just starting out as a teacher here in Prince William County, and we were teaching Sunday school, and we were advisors with the youth group. Yeah. And there was a pastor on staff. They had Jeff Carter was senior pastor, and a woman, Nancy Fitzgerald, was the associate pastor. That was my first time ever seeing a female pastor. I was 24. And honestly, I looked at the sign outside the church that showed two pastors and showed a name of a female pastor, and I was like, I don't know about this. Yeah. My husband had grown up in the Church of the Brethren, really wanted to get back into the Church of the Brethren, and I thought, well, at least if she's not senior pastor, then I'll attend, because she's under the leadership of the senior pastor.
So you even wrestled with attending with her as a pastor.
As a pastor, and I wrestled with it. And one day she said to me, and I grew to really love her. She's a wonderful mentor of mine. And in all of our volunteering and all the ways that I was serving at the church to teach our Sunday school classes, she asked me one day, she said, why did you never go into ministry?
Wow.
And I looked at her, she's a female pastor. I looked at her and I said, because women can't be pastors.
Wow.
And she said, we should talk about that.
Because you're talking to me right now.
Right.
That's probably what she was thinking.
Yeah, because you're right, exactly. She's a female pastor. What do you mean women can't be pastors? Like, I am a living, breathing female pastor. So I had to deconstruct and all these things, because I knew the Holy Spirit was moving in me, even as a teenager, to go into ministry. And there was no place for me at my church growing up. And so the Manassas Church of the Brethren called me into ministry. They because I was a school teacher, I had my summers off, and that was before we had kids. They created this whole Explore Your Call summer for me. Wow. And I got to preach, and I got to do pastoral visits, and I got to see some of the behind-the-scenes work of pastoral ministry, which led to them supporting me to go to seminary and get my degree, which my degree is a Master's of Arts in Christian Education, because I was still a little hung up about getting an MDiv as a woman. Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? So then I thought I would always be an associate pastor, and that I would always do youth ministry, and I never ever wanted to be a lead pastor of a church, because it felt too big and too overwhelming, and God had other plans for me. So in 2018, I got called as the lead pastor at the Manassas Church of the Brethren. The first, while we had other female pastors on staff before, I'm the first lead pastor who's female. And now when you look at the sign, it's my name on that sign. Yeah. And so there are people driving by who might wonder about having a female pastor.
So how old is your church?
Our church was founded in 1895. It's been around a long, long time.
And in 2018, they established their first
lead pastor. Who's female.
We have to unpack even.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. Yeah. And my gosh, the same amount of wrestling you did, because I remember Joyce Myers. I struggled to listen to her, and so one of the things, as you were saying, it underscores who is God, in who is the creator in to our world, to our lives, that we as humans decide what the call of a person's life, what the purpose for their existence is by putting these boundaries and barriers and blockers in place to say, yeah, like the Creator made you to go into ministry to minister to people, and you can do that in a variety of ways, but He made you with a specific call.
Right.
And then there are all these limitations that are put in your place. It underscores for me and unpacks for me all the years of enslavement here in this country with people who are gifted. So my husband and I talk about this all the time, especially you get the first everything. You have Coco Gauff just the other day is the first teenager since Serena to win the Grand Slam. Right. You have all these the first young kids to graduate, and they're like black kids, the first pilot, the first this, the first Supreme Court judge, the first, black president, there's so many firsts happening, and it's directly related to people's gifts and purposes that they've been specifically created to fulfill being blocked, and we have to talk about those things. But with you sitting here as a perfect example, because I remember I struggled to listen to Joyce Meyer, and then I remember just one day saying, who do you think you are? Like putting these boundaries in place that I have something to do with what she's been called to do. I just remember questioning myself. And then I remember the consequence that we would experience in my house when especially I was the one who would challenge these things. I would challenge these things, and I would tell that they're not real Christians. They're indecent and out of order. God doesn't make mistakes. God is a God of order, and women are not allowed to speak in the church. And I was just like, what? Am I gonna just be resigned to teaching Sunday school? Right. I don't know. I don't have a call in my life to be a pastor.
You have your own call.
I have my own call. But I also wrestled with that, because when people here would refer to Carrie the full term as you being in ministry, I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm not in ministry. I'm not doing that. And I just, adulterated like what that actually meant to be a minister or a pastor or a leader. And it just is because I was always shying away from not ever being perceived as a woman leader, pastor, because it wasn't just for pastoring. Yes, that my stepfather would reference pastoring, but it was also just women in leadership roles at all, especially when this is what he would say, a man cannot sit under a woman. And so I was just like, there are so many examples in the Bible where men sat under women. And it was just like, I am so happy that you were nurtured and mentored, and you were invited and responded.
Sure.
Even when you struggled.
Sure. I know. I've had people say, like, women can't be pastors. I was like, I know, I get that. Like, I totally agree. I just says the female pastor. Like, I had to wrestle with that too, and that just, for me, God is going to equip who God calls, right? And we are all imperfect human beings. I promise you, there's not a day that goes by in my ministry where I'm not, making a mistake or learning something new, or
I've signed up for that job.
Right? Like, nobody's perfect. We're all just making our way. But when we allow God through the Holy Spirit to like guide us one step at a time, and we do it in community, and we find people to support us, we can really make a difference, right? Yeah.
So how have you, I don't want to end the conversation without asking, how have you seen, since you've been the lead pastor, your church evolve, the community around you? How have you witnessed the evolution of you being in that role, whether it's in your church or within the surrounding community?
Yeah.
Whether it's in thoughts or engagement.
Yeah. Well, I love the Manassas Church of the Brethren. I'm a little biased. I serve as their pastor, but they're just good people, and they have good hearts. And for them to be able to see the gifts within me and then call me as their pastor, it's just been an incredible journey. But I preach a lot, and if you're from the Manassas Church of the Brethren, you're listening to this, it is so important when we don't understand something, or we bump up against these judgments, right? Gosh, that should never be, or, I can't believe, what put this person in this situation to begin with. And our mind goes to judging. I really encourage our folks to lean in and start asking more questions to seek understanding. Because when you dig deep and you get to know people, we all have our story, and I think we'll be surrounded by much more grace that way, and compassion. And I have really seen our congregation grow in that ability, which they already had, right? But to grow in that ability to extend grace to themselves and to each other and to the larger community, as we all realize, like, we're all just a bunch of human beings making our way in this world, and whatever we can do to extend more love and extend more grace and compassion is what we're really called to do.
That's pretty amazing. And I think that, I mean, I could come up with something else, but I think this is a pretty solid place to wrap it up, because it's exactly what it exemplifies, like embodies the work that we do here at Carry the Full Term. To dig in, ask different questions and extend grace. Thank you, Pastor Mandy. Where can people find you at Church of the Brethren?
Yeah, so you can find us. We've got a Facebook page. We've got our website. It's manassasbrethren.org. And we'd love to have you plug in with us.
manassasbrethren.org. And it's right off 28.
It's right off 28, just south of Old Town. So.
Well, I am as happy if you're out Church of the Brethren congregation, as much as you are happy with your lead pastor. I put my hand up. I'm equally as delighted and happy to have her as a member on Carry the Full Term's board of director. It has been a support. She has been a load lifter, inviting me into spaces and supporting me into other projects that we have going on. So I'm just as happy to have her in a different capacity as you are happy to have her as a lead pastor. Thank you, Pastor Mandy.
Yes,
it's been a delight. It has all the juicy nuggets. So thank you you've been listening to the Carry the Full Term's Breaking Cycles podcast. In studio, our guest, Pastor Mandy North, leader of Church of the Brethren and a board member at Carry the Full Term. We are happy to have you. We're happy to have you tune into us and listening to this podcast segment. If you haven't listened to any of the previous 4 episodes, please do so. But take your time and listen to this over and over again, whatever resonates with you. If you have to stop and marinate on parts of what we've just discussed, please do so. And if you need to reach out to Pastor Mandy, you could do so at Church of the Brethren, or you could send her an email from our Carry the Full Term Facebook page. However you need to get in contact with her so that you could get connected to support and to serve and just to learn more, you could do so by reaching out to her at churchofthebrethren.org. Right?
manassasbrethren.org.
manassasbrethren.org. I will snip that. So by reaching out to her at manassasbrethren.org.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor Mandy.
Great.
This has just been wonderful. Oh my gosh, it was so good. You have been listening to the Carry the Full Term Breaking Cycles podcast. To learn more about our organization, visit us online at carriedtofullterm.org. Your host has been Francis Robin. Marketing director has been Emily Enox. Music was provided by Ryan Robin. Thank you for joining us. Visit us again at carriedtofullterm.org to learn more about our mission.